your host, Mimosa,
and co-host, Kareem.
Welcome to Sometimes We're Boujee and Sometimes We Hood, to healing, navigating grief. It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance. Welcome in, and welcome to Sometimes We're Boujee.
Sometimes we hood.
It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembrance. I'm your host, Auntie Mimosa.
Hey, this is Cousin Kareem. What's going on?
And whether you're in the depths of grief, slowly learning to live with loss, or supporting someone in their journey, this space is for you. Grief is deeply personal. There is no timeline, no rule book, no right way to navigate it. But through shared experiences, honest conversations, and moments of reflection, we can find comfort, understanding, and hope. In today's episode, we talk about the silent, often invisible weight of loss and the strength it takes to carry it. We're diving into a conversation that's raw, real, and rarely talked about in the open: grief and addiction. Whether you've lost someone to addiction, are in recovery yourself while grieving, or love someone who struggles, this episode is for you. Grief alone is hard enough. Addiction alone is hard enough. When they coexist, it can feel unbearable, but you're not alone. Let's start by unpacking the layers. Today's episode is Grief and Addiction, the Weight We Carry. Cousin Kareem, what are your thoughts?
I mean, people, what I realize is that a lot of people don't think of things as addictions until probably somebody brings it up.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because they don't think of it as something negative. I mean, only recently people realized that sex was an addiction, you know,
Okay.
because of the dopamine that comes from addictions. But, you know, some things that people do, if you do it excessively, that's an addiction. I guess it's a definition. But, you know, some people, like I said, if it doesn't seem like it's a bad thing, you know, like you're not like hurting somebody or hurting somebody, you're hurting yourself or somebody else. Yeah, people say, oh, you know, it is. But I think people need to be careful of what their, you know, addictions that pop up. Overconsumption.
You are very choppy.
Am I?
Yes.
Oh, man. I apologize.
What's going on with your bandwidth?
And I'm choppy. Jeez.
Hey, Chloe. Yes, you're choppy. Your bandwidth. What's going on with your bandwidth? Sorry. What's going on with that? No. I'm gonna keep talking till you get that figured out. Okay.
Yeah.
So, we're talking about understanding grief and addiction, right? So, of course, there are three types of grief: anticipatory grief, ambiguous grief, and disenfranchised grief. And Chloe, don't laugh at us, okay? Anticipatory grief occurs before a loss actually happens. It is the emotional pain and mourning experienced in advance of an expected loss, such as the impending transition of a loved one due to a terminal illness. And the key features of anticipatory grief is that it begins before the actual transition of loss. It involves preparing emotionally for the separation, and it includes sadness, anger, anxiety, and guilt, and often seen in caregivers or family members of someone with degenerative conditions such as Alzheimer, cancer, dementia, and other things. So when we're talking about anticipatory grief, I was saying this earlier while I was on TikTok. So I was on TikTok ahead of you. I kind of went on earlier to kind of get
Okay.
things rolling. And I'm going to say welcome in to everyone that is on TikTok. Welcome to Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood. So anticipatory grief, I know this one all too well. Okay. And I think a lot of us know this one all too well. And that one I experienced with my mother and my grandmother when they were about to make their transition. Okay. I experienced that with them because one, my mother first, because she had cirrhosis of the liver, where she only had maybe about 5 to 10% liver function. And then, um, woo-hoo, way to go, Chloe. Um, Come on, my phone is acting ridiculous. Um, there we go. Um, and my with my mother because she had what I would say she had stage 4 renal disease, kidney disease. She had cirrhosis of the liver, where she only had maybe like 5 to 10% liver function, and
Mm.
then of course my mom had her right leg amputated just below the knee. Okay. So my mother was no longer the very vibrant person, funny person that she used to be. Welcome in, Deborah. Um, Before she transitioned, and then she kind of reverted a little bit mentally. She kind of reverted backwards when she was in a nursing home. Not 100%, but I can tell you, I remember either funny story real quick, and then we're gonna move forward. I can remember getting a phone call from the nursing home telling me that my mom was in a fight in her wheelchair with somebody else. Help me understand. Help me, y'all. She's in a nursing home. She's in the wheelchair. The lady she's fighting in the wheelchair. That was hilarious. Okay, help me understand. I don't know, but anyway.
It was a
So
traffic jam. That's why.
it's a traffic jam. So cousin Kareem said it was a traffic jam. That's the reason for the fight in the wheelchairs. I don't understand. Yes, they do. They be cracking me up in nurse homes. But I went through that grief with her, mourning her while she was alive because she wasn't her normal self from what I remember. Okay. And then the same with my grandmother. When my grandmother got sick, and she ended up becoming bedridden, and then it was things that were going on where she had some slight dementia taking place in her mind. She wasn't her same self. The fact that she could get up and move and cook and do things, you know what I'm saying? So I experienced that anticipatory grief both with my mother and my grandmother. So I know I definitely had know firsthand what it's like. And those of you listening on TikTok, again, thank you for coming in. I appreciate you. Please take care of your business. Do your daily heart meet. Share the live out. Tap the screen 2 times. Get your extra coins. Tell me where you are. Tell me where you are. Love to interact with one another on here. Like, come on, use this platform to get yourself situated. Okay. But yeah, I had no. I mean, it was that and I think we all somewhere along the line have experienced anticipatory grief. Like if you have a loved one who's sick, you know what I'm saying? If you, and especially today, it almost seems like everybody, some form of fashion, has some type of cancer, or if they're elderly, the Alzheimer's and the dementia. We got to lay off the sugar. I can tell you that much. Okay.
Yeah.
So I definitely experienced that twice. Now, especially the anger and the guilt, okay? Because and some of the anxiety, I definitely had that. Then there too, the second one is ambiguous grief or ambiguous loss, right? Ambiguous grief happens when there is a loss that is unclear or lacks closure, right? It occurs when a person is physically present but psychologically absent, like dementia, or psychologically present but physically absent, like a missing person, or if you have a family member or someone who's incarcerated. Okay.
Mhm.
And the key features with that is lack of clear resolution or understanding what's going on, what's taking place, why, and trying to understand the process or what has taken place. That grief remains frozen or unresolved, right? And it's common in family members or families of people that have traumatic brain injury, addiction, or estrangement. So imagine you can relate to that, cousin Kareem. And the reason I say you can relate to that was the absence or the estrangement of your dad.
Yeah.
Okay. And
Yep.
then, right? And then ambiguous grief, it is hard to mourn or move on because the status of that loved one is uncertain. It's uncertain. Okay. And I also relate to the ambiguous grief because to me, that sounds, it also happens with tragic loss. When you have a tragic loss, okay. So when I tragically lost Deej in 2021, you know, there was no closure there. There was no closure. I got a phone call at 6 o'clock in the morning telling me my oldest son was no longer here. Where was the closure? And I had just talked to him maybe the week before, or over that weekend, prior to that weekend. You know what I'm saying? So there's no closure there. I can imagine that mothers and fathers of families, experience this with family members that are incarcerated. Even though you can talk to them, you can go see them, but they're not physically present in the day-to-day life for birthday celebrations and family cookouts in the summer and holidays, right? Okay. Then the third one is disenfranchised grief. Disenfranchised grief. This is grief that refers to grief that is not socially acknowledged or supported. I'm going to say that again. Disenfranchised grief refers to the grief that is not socially acknowledged or supported. It happens when a person's loss is not seen as legitimate or worthy of mourning by society and others.
Wow. That's crazy.
That's heavy. That is heavy. So
You got to break it down. What kind of losses would that be? Some people who might not get that.
since we
Example.
brought up incarceration, how about individuals who go to the electric chair?
Woo.
Or that's given a death sentence?
Yeah.
Now, their families, right? Their families may be mourning. This is what their families may be experiencing, the disenfranchised grief, because they feel isolated or invalidated, that no one is comforting them because their family member, maybe brother, sister, husband, uncle, daughter, whoever, is incarcerated and is given a death sentence and has to go to the electric chair. No one feels sorry for that family. No one is helping that family mourn or grieve that individual, right?
That loneliness. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And examples also include grieving a pet. Some people think, why do you have to grieve a pet? That's an animal. That the animal life didn't matter. Some people feel like that. But to you, that's important. That's very important to you because that pet was your confidant. That pet was your that pet was your fur baby. You know what I'm
your
saying?
emotional support. Yeah.
Emotional support. That's what that pet was to you, right? So why not grieve the pet? I'm a pet lover. I'm an animal lover. So when someone grieves their pet, I'm feeling that. I'm like, I get it. I understand it. Another example is grieving of an ex-partner. So you've been in a relationship or you've been married and your ex transitions, exits out of here, and your family and friends are looking at you like, why are you grieving this person? That's your ex. They
Yeah.
treated you wrong. You should not grieve them. All right. Okay. A miscarriage or a stigmatized death like a suicide or an overdose. And the reason and I have to step back for just a moment. The reason for this topic today is because I lost a client 2 weekends ago, right? Because last my y'all this menopause brain. Okay, so last week was 4th of July. Sorry, last week was 4th of July. The weekend before that, a client I had a client transition, and this client was mental health, substance abuse, transitioned. I reached out to the mother because I understood the mother's loss because this was her child. He was 30 years old. At the same time, I also understand the relief she felt
Right.
because one, her son is no longer in pain. Because prior to this, he received a serious injury that left him paralyzed with
Mm,
two I don't know if I can say gunshots, but if I can, F1 TikTok, okay, to the chest that left him paralyzed and in a wheelchair, okay. And I'm going to say that maybe he thought he was invincible because he survived that, right? And then there was another time he went in the hospital behind smoking a cigarette, knew he wasn't supposed to do it because his body couldn't handle it. And then he went through physical therapy and gained enough strength to utilize his wheelchair and wheeled away from home twice.
wow.
Twice. The first time they found him, he went back in the hospital. The second time, he did not come out the hospital. And as a case manager, my heart is broke for not only the mother, but for this situation because this and my team, because we did everything we could to get this individual on the right path, the talks, the coaching, to get him to see that his life was worth so much more. But again, when you're dealing with someone with mental health, whether they're schizophrenic, bipolar, manic depressive, what have you, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. It's a weight that's for you as a
Right.
caregiver. Am I choppy still?
Yes, a little bit, but go ahead.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
okay, let me try. Trying to work it on the backside.
Mm-hmm.
For like the caregiver side, even for somebody who is trying to help and assist with somebody transitioning from an institution. When I say institution, I'm not just talking about prison. I'm talking about people getting out of the military too. It's like trying to. I was ever in the military, but I deal with people getting out of the military a lot. And the transition from military life of giving orders and expecting results to civilian lifestyle where you give an order and somebody might curse you out is so it takes a minute to get used to come out of that lifestyle where
Right.
things are there for you. And you have to, as the person on the side, you have
Mm-hmm.
to handle those things. I don't want to say delicately, but you got to handle those things with some form of empathy, but also with some form of firmness, because some people wallow in that. And then with that, now the anger comes. Like, why can't you just adapt? Like, this was coming. Adapt. Like, adapt and overcome. Adapt and overcome. And, I look at some situations, and it's just the stepping back from allowing the person to just fall back, constantly keep falling back into their own form of grief,
Mm-hmm.
about the situation. Like you said,
Right.
they're in a wheelchair. It's like, oh, woe was me. Yes, I understand empathy wise, but at the same time, what
Mm-hmm.
are we going to do now going forward? We can't keep taking one step forward, 4 steps back.
Right.
It's like, how do you deal with that as the
Mhm.
person who's not going through it in trying to be the supportive person, but without trying to be too harsh to be like, no, I got to push you. Like, I got to pull you. Like, we
Right.
got to do this thing because, you got to do things, learn to do things on your own. And
Mm-hmm.
it's a serious question for
Right.
some people who never been in that situation before. They're just looking out from the outside like, what's your problem? Like, and you, of course, you're in it as a second person or the side person.
Mm-hmm.
You have a different opinion that you can't even express, like why you're going through it or why they're going through it. But
Right.
the third person looking in on it, they never experienced it. So I think that's what it is. Experiences bring on a whole different picture,
Mm-hmm.
from that viewpoint.
Right. So with this, and right, and it's difficult when you're in it, when you're in with dealing with individuals that have mental health and some type of, and they might feel invincible, that nothing can happen to them, and they keep, as they say, they keep pushing that envelope, right? So with disenfranchised grief, again, this is grief that refers to, or grief that is not socially acknowledged or supported. Okay. Another thing is that this can occur in marginalized communities where grief is dismissed, overlooked. So culturally, in some cultures, this grief can be overlooked. Like, why are we grieving? We're not supposed to be grieving. And then, of course, addiction as a chronic illness is not a moral failure
Right.
under disenfranchised grief. So the transition of my client is looked at from that last one. Addiction as a chronic illness is not a moral failure. So where I'm empathetic in understanding or comprehending what my client's mother is going through, others are not, right? Others are
Yeah.
not. They're like, he did drugs, he got what he deserved, and there's no support for her, where she
Yeah.
may feel isolated in this situation, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
They
So
feel the consequences are the result. The results are based on the consequences, and
right,
then they take out that kind of that empathetic. Everything for me sometimes, especially when it comes to like uh, cause and effect,
mm-hmm,
the empathy has to be put in there. Try to step in that person's shoes before you open your mouth and say something, because it's like if you've never been through it, then you definitely don't understand. And if you have been through it, that's when you need to kind of do the side by side comparisons, like where this and this, how was it this low? Because some people, they even still, if they've been through it, they still got
right,
something, an opinion to say.
right,
You know,
right, right. And then everyone doesn't grieve the same way. Everyone is not receptive um when it comes to this. And this, I want to say that disenfranchised grief, that may be one of the most difficult to handle. That's one of the most difficult to handle. Um, so just quickly, addiction as a chronic illness. Okay, so to define that for those who may not know how addiction is seen as a chronic illness, is that it affects the brain's reward, the motivation and memory system. It alters brain chemistry and the function, and leading to compulsive substance use despite harmful consequences, right? So, and then the key characteristics, which are similar to chronic illnesses like diabetes or hypertension. And I also give a disclaimer, y'all. I am not a licensed therapist. I am not a psychologist. I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I am a case manager. I work with individuals that have mental illness, substance abuse. I have been in this field for over 25 years. So I definitely understand. And I've also, between mental illness and the medical field combined, um, this is it. Okay. So long term conditions, like key characteristics of addiction. So long term conditions with cycles of relapse and remission. And we all know, if you have a family member that has substance abuse or has some type of addictive illness, we all know what it is. They start, they stop. They start, they stop. They go into um, a rehab facility, they come out, they're good, something triggers them, they start right back. Biological basis involving changes in the brain, the structure and function, especially in dopamine regulation and impulse control. And then genetic and environmental risk factors play a role. And it requires ongoing management and support and not just a one time treatment. And that's the thing about addiction. It's not, when it comes to whether it's substance abuse or alcohol, it is not one individual, it's not one time. Sometimes we think, oh, go to rehab, go into, once you come out, you're good. No, they have to have support. That's why there's Al-Anon. That's why there's, AA. That's why there's all the different supports. ACT in mental health. There's ACT, Assertive Community Treatment Team. That's when I'm a type of case manager that I am. That's why there is, all these mental health agencies that are now existing to help these individuals navigate through life. Okay. Um, Addiction it's a serious thing. And again, when you add grief to it, when you add the two together, it's extremely difficult to manage. And I can tell you that, some of my individuals, they have experienced grief from losses of family members, mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunts, and uncles, and they will turn to substance abuse. They will turn to substance abuse because of the fact that one, majority of them is schizophrenic, and they will say that whatever substance they're using helps quiet the voices. It helps quiet the voices in their minds. The opposite side of that is it induces behaviors, negative behaviors, whether they become extremely aggressive or, they become medication non-compliant because the medication they're taking and the substance they're taking, the two clash, so they stop taking their medication, right? Okay.
Self-medicate.
Right. Okay. So why is it not a moral failure? That's a question. Okay. Or what we're going to look at why it's not, like what is said that addiction is not a moral failure. So brain changes, right? Caused by substance impaired judgment, self-control, decision making, which makes stopping very difficult, even when a person wants to quit. So sometimes, like, you kind of wonder, like, why can't you quit? Or why did you start? People with addiction often suffer from trauma, mental illness, chronic stress, which contributes to vulnerability. And I look at that statement and I want to say that is so untrue. But I don't, I want to say it's untrue, but again, it's on an individual basis, right? Because I know and I can only speak to myself, I know what I've been through. I know what I've been through in my life. I know the trauma that I have endured. Okay, that some people don't know about. And what I've been through would put most people in a corner rocking back and forth with their thumbs in their mouth. It would.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I've been talking about trauma, childhood trauma as far as being molested. Okay. Being raped my freshman year of college, failed marriages, having to undergo mental abuse, physical abuse. I have been through. Some of my family, they're probably watching, going, "Oh my God, I didn't know she went through all that." Yes, I did. Okay, they didn't know it, but that's what I've been through. Okay. And again, that would make some people sit in the corner and rock back and forth with their thumbs in their mouth. And I look at that, the transition of my mother, the transition of my grandmother, the transition of my oldest child. You know what I'm saying? And I just outright refuse to resort to drugs or alcohol or anything addictive. I refuse. Now, I don't know where that inner strength comes from and why other people don't have it, but I just know I refuse. And I sometimes I look at people and I go, why can't you adopt that same concept? But that's not for me to understand. I just know I've been through the things that I've been through to help other people get through those things as well. To show them that they can be they are survivors. You know what I'm saying? They don't have to become victims of addiction.
And you don't need anything to cope.
Exactly. You know, viewing addiction as a moral issue leads to stigma, shame, and punishment rather than treatment and recovery. And then treating addiction like a moral failure discourages people from seeking help and perpetuates cycle of guilt and isolation. So when we look at addiction in individuals, it's and I can understand, because sometimes family members get tired. They get tired of singing the same song about getting help and going to therapy. And then you have those that just don't have the support. They don't have it.
Yeah.
They don't have it.
Would it be also clear to say too that some people don't even know which support they need? Because I had a cousin uncle. His father was alcoholic. He became alcoholic. He messed up my only birthday party, and I'm not really sure, but it took him years to get off that addiction. Alcohol addiction. I'm not sure actually what something just hit him one day and just told him to, like, I need to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we were there trying to support him, at least from my age group. I was there trying to help him, support him. Some of the elders were trying to be there, support him. Some of the other cousins. It's just that when that trigger, when you say like identifying your trigger, some people don't know what their trigger is, or they don't care what their trigger is. They just, I gotta go do it now. It's like, like they don't care that they know the trigger. They just know that I got a solution for when my trigger hits. This is what I'm going to do, and I'll just deal with it the next day.
Right.
It's not about how much it affects the people that are trying to support you, or how much it affects yourself physically, because at some point it catches up to you. All of that, the substance abuse or whatever. Like my wife's aunt, she was on drugs for years. And all of a sudden, she went to the doctor 6 months later, and she went for a cancer check because cancer is in her family. And then 6 months later, they're like, "Oh, sorry, stage 4." And it's just like, what, And that's like how, like, and then you watch them go through their grief, like not what was me, but more so, it's like, how do I can't rectify the mistakes that I made in the past.
Right. And that's right.
Doing substance. I've been having this grief that caused me, to do that. It's like excuse upon excuse upon excuse. But in reality, it's a weight that they never figured out how to deal with.
Right.
It's not in their mind. It's not an excuse. In the family members' minds who are walking that grief, that I forgot what you said.
Anticipatory grief.
Grief, and the other grief where you just going through it on your own. Yeah. And it's like you understand what they went through.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you're like still like, I was here. Like all we had to do, like I could, if you would have talked to me.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like my wife is going through is it's like that grief all the time. It's like there were solutions, but
Mm-hmm.
some people don't know or don't want to fall back on that person. Like I think because okay, let me back up.
Mm-hmm.
So my wife and aunt, my to my wife is like a second mom.
Mm-hmm.
I think that sometimes ego gets in the way of asking for help
Oh,
because
ego.
yeah, because in that situation, she knew my wife looked up to her as a second mom. But
Right.
how do you go to your child? We've all been in that situation as parents. Sometimes you need to go to your child and
Mm-hmm.
ask for help. It is one of the most humbling experiences, whatever kind of help, it
Right.
is financial, physical, even mental, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where you just need to
Yes.
have a conversation to get like a different view because maybe the
Yes.
child can understand these
Mm-hmm.
complex thoughts. But when you have to humble yourself as a parent to go to your child or somebody who's younger than you and ask for help,
Mm-hmm.
some people I don't think some adults can't handle that.
Right.
And it's like I've sunk so low that I've got to go to the next generation to ask for help, even though that next generation might have more answers because it's the next generation. There
Mm-hmm.
might be answers out there that have been answered, or the
Right, because they
solution
have a
has
different
come
perspective.
exactly.
Because they have
But
right,
the
they have a
people are
different
so
perspective. Mm-hmm.
yeah, but they're so egotistical that they rather try and deal with it by doing nothing to try to solve something else. And then they get addicted to something. And then so now it's two things: the original problem and the addiction. You know, and that's something my mother told me one time when my cousin uncle was drinking.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you know why he does it? Because he's trying to escape reality. But what happens is when you come down from that, in this case it was alcohol addiction,
Mm-hmm.
getting drunk, getting high, whatever, the problem is still there. And that's
Right.
stuck in my mind. It's true. Why would I do something I know is physically going to harm me to get away from the situation? But now my situation has compounded because not only is the problem still there, but now I got to deal with the repercussions of the addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's the same thing I was saying for people who have addictions to sex. You can go bang out all you want, but the one time that condom pops, or if you don't even wear a condom, now you're stuck with something forever. And that something could be a child, or it is
Or disease you can't get rid of.
yeah, exactly. So you
Right.
thinking, yeah, I'm just getting it out, I'm just getting it out. We're having fun, the other person enjoying themselves too. But now here you are. This addiction has caused a life-changing event. And now you're like, oh, how do I handle that?
Well, all addiction has a life changing effect, and you say ego. Is it ego? Is it pride? Some people may say it's both. But again, like you said, yes, you have, once you come down off of that high, that reality is still there.
Yeah.
It is still there, right? The problem is still in front of you. You know um, I'm gonna say to the TikTok folks that are watching, if you have any questions, please type your questions. So you can ask myself or cousin Kareem if you have any questions. Um, so again, addiction and why it's not a moral failure when it comes to grieving or when a person becomes unalived or transition. Again, like treating addiction like a moral failure discourages people from seeking help and perpetuates a cycle of guilt and isolation. Community. This is where, like, I really believe community, we as a people really have to come together and build our communities back. We have to take our communities back. We have to build and go back and kind of create a new community. I don't want to say go back, but create a new community where we look out for one another, where as elders we can say something to these young kids, these girls and young men. Pull up your pants, please fix your clothes, dress, pull yourself together, do not dress like that, and not have that backlash of you ain't my mama, you can't tell me what to do. But that's a whole nother conversation. But implications of the chronic illness model is that one, it promotes compassionate evidence-based care rather than blame, right? It supports the need for long-term treatment plans, including therapy. We're talking about addiction right now. It supports the need for long-term treatment plans, including therapy, medication, and peer support, right? It encourages harm reduction strategies, which meet people where they are instead of demanding immediate abstinence. And it helps reduce social stigmas and integrate addiction treatment into mainstream healthcare. And stigma and silence around both, okay? And we definitely implement all of that into the agency that I work for, where a lot of addictions are treated with medication, other medications to help keep that craving down. The stigma and silence surrounding both grief and addiction have profound impacts, like not only on individuals experiencing them, but also on how society responds. Like in both cases, miscomprehension, misunderstanding, and judgment can isolate people at their most vulnerable times, and it prevents healing and support. So, with that being said, like if you know someone who has an addiction, who is grieving, like give them as much support as you possibly can. Take a moment to be empathetic and put yourself in their shoes to understand why they are doing what they're doing, why they are utilizing substance abuse, why they're utilizing alcohol to cover up their pain. Consistent and constant encouragement for treatment. And the thing about it, it has to be a gentle push, okay? Not the forceful push that a lot of people tend to do. It has to be a consistent, gentle push with them, okay? And then eventually they'll move over and be like, I think I'm gonna go to rehab today.
Okay.
It does work. It doesn't always work, but it does work, and it may take some time to work. It might take 2 years, it might take 3 years, but it does eventually get that person to rehab. So let's transition to like the stigma and silence around grief, especially when it comes to ambiguous, disenfranchised, or anticipatory grief and how it shows up, right? So, and Cousin Kareem and I talk about this often, and we have said this. People are often told to move on and get over it. That is the absolute worst thing you can tell somebody who is grieving. You have no right to tell anyone to move on and get over it. No right. Absolutely no right to do that. None. Zero.
Well, let me play the advocate. So I used to work at a dealership, and this one I had a dude. They were millionaires. Son comes to work for the dealership. He comes in one day, and I just had knee surgery. So I had some Oxycontin, Codone. He's like, yo, let me buy some pills for me. I'm like, man, I ain't bringing those pills. So anyway, I was like, what's wrong? What do you need them for? He's like, nothing's wrong, man. I'm on pain. My dad, he wouldn't give me any gas money. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, he wouldn't give me no gas money, man. He knew I needed to go out last night. And I was like, so he was upset. He's like, ever since my mom died, every time I ask him for something, he got mad. He doesn't want to help me. And so I made the connection that he's thinking my mom passed, my dad won't help me with things that I can help myself with. So how, you know what I mean? So in that situation there, it's like, how do you be gentle to try to let this person realize you're an adult, your dad's an adult. I understand, the situation that your mom passed, but you're working. Why is your dad responsible for your budget? Which gas is part of that, you know? Like you wanted this vehicle, but you don't need a big vehicle. You're single. And now you're upset that you don't have the money because you spend it all on drugs and partying to fill it up so you can go out more, have more fun. You know, it's like those little tiny situations. How do you deal with that without being too judgmental? You know, just walk away. Did
That
that
is
come? I hope it didn't come in chocolate.
so that is definitely a gentle push for get yourself together. Not necessarily move on or get over it, but
Oh,
get
okay.
yourself together.
That
Um,
makes more sense.
that's one of those situations where you kind of have that conversation and you say, okay, let me understand something, right? You're coming to me, you're asking to purchase or for me to give you one of my pain pills because you're upset because your father would not give you gas money to go out. And then you just be quiet and kind of look at them for their answer to
Let them
see,
try to figure it out, right? Yeah.
right, see if it computes that what they're saying does not make sense, right?
Okay.
And if they don't, and if they keep going, oh, but blah, 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 say it again. I want to make sure I'm understanding you clearly. You're saying to me, this is what you want me to, and if even if you have to do it several times to where then it clicks in their mind that that makes no sense, what I'm asking.
Yeah. I think it's hard for people. I shouldn't say. I've talked to some people who have, you over here in the office and somebody's talking to them about a grievous situation, and the other person sitting back there like, I don't know how to approach it because the confusion of the grief of losing a pet versus the situation I was talking about with the gas money. It's like some people put that all on one pile. Like I'm being opinionated. I don't want to be opinionated, so I'm just not gonna say nothing because I don't want to feel opinionated. Like in the situation with the kid or the child who wanted the money for gas, it's different than you losing your pet and saying get over it, like grow up. You know what I mean? Those are two different situations. But some people, when they're put in a situation to try to assist, they might combine the two out of confusion of
Well,
being, like I said, just over.
right, and that's where emotional intelligence comes in. Like knowing the real, right? Really, emotional intelligence, and I honestly believe everyone should either take a course or read a book about emotional intelligence and how to put it into practical use because I believe that's one of the things we lack in society is emotional intelligence. We don't, and where we are now with this rush, I want instant gratification. Emotional intelligence is out of the window.
Yes,
you know
it
Come for me if
is.
you want to. That's all I have to say. Come for me. Yes, I said it. Come for me. I don't care. You know what I'm saying? I really don't care. Yes, I said it. So to go back to stigma and silence around grief, especially ambiguous, disenfranchised, and anticipatory grief. Certain types of griefs like miscarriages, loss of an ex, overdose are dismissed and even minimized. which makes it
Very
much
much.
more difficult for the individual experiencing it because again they feel isolated in what they're going through. They feel as if no one comprehends or overstands, understands, or can empathize or sympathize with their grief. Mourners may feel pressure to hide their pain or even to avoid making other, to avoid making others feel uncomfortable because
Yeah.
they may talk about it or want to talk about it and the people around them feel uncomfortable. And it's in we as a society, I want to say certain people, how do I want to say this? We have an ear for certain people, right? And then there's in our networks, in our circle, and then we do not have an ear for certain people. Does that make sense? Like we'll
Yeah.
be willing to listen to someone who's close to us about their pain that they're going through and comfort them. But when it comes to a colleague or coworker or a stranger in or a stranger, we're not willing to listen. But
Hmm.
that's what we want to do, the get over it. You should be over it by now. But that's unfair to them. That's unfair. Okay. And cultural norms may discourage open expression of emotion or vulnerability. Okay. I couldn't get it out. Um, and there's consequences behind that: isolation, loneliness, unprocessed grief, right? There's an increased risk of depression or prolonged grief disorder. Did you know you bet y'all didn't even know that? Hey, Lady V. There's a prolonged grief disorder and then a lack of public rituals or community support. Those are the consequences behind the stigma and silence around grief when it comes to addiction. Okay. And then this is when it comes to grief. That's I'm sorry, stigma and silence around grief. Now I'm gonna move on to the stigma and silence around addiction. And that's rooted in misconcepts that addiction is a moral failure and not a medical condition. And it's associated with criminality, weakness, or bad behavior. And that's what a lot of times people associate addiction with. And how does it show up? People with addiction are often blamed or shamed. And that's, think about any families or family members, and you have that one cousin that comes to the family cookout and everybody knows this family member does or have substance abuse, and it's like you don't turn your nose up at them or you don't want to talk to them. There's judgment that's passed. you know um Families may hide the issue out of embarrassment or fear of judgment. We just talked about that. I just said that. And and those in recovery may feel unable to speak openly about their journey. And that's how people heal. They heal speaking openly about their journey. And then of course, media portrayals don't help, right? TV does not help how they portray addicts. It reinforces harmful stereotypes. And that's sad because, for all you know, the family member, the cousin, the uncle, the auntie, the grandma, who is all you think may have it all together, right? Maybe slipping in the bathroom or slipping in her car, his car. But what you see on the outside is a display of them having it all together because they're hiding it. And the consequences behind that is a delay or an avoidance of treatment. They lose employment, housing, social support because their money is going out the door. There's an increased risk of overdose or unaliving due to the fear of seeking help and the marginalization or criminalization instead of care,
Mm.
right?
Yeah, that's a big part. Go ahead.
Yes, go ahead. Nope, go, because we have about a couple of more minutes before we close.
No, that's good. That's good. Just go ahead. Go ahead. Go finish up. Yeah.
I'm about to
Just
say, because there will be a part two to this, because you
yeah.
have no idea like how much more information there is when it comes to grief and addiction and the weight we carry, because so many families are dealing with this, so many people are dealing with this. And again, I dedicate this show to my client and his family. Due to HIPAA, I am unable to say their names. Okay, but I dedicate this part one and part two to my client, who transitioned as a result of overdose. And my support goes out to his mother. And like I said, I reached out to her, called her, and I let her know that, like, if she just needed to call me and cry on the phone, I was there for her, because I understand what it's like to lose a child. And on the other side of it, I do understand the relief she feels. I understand that relief, because now she no longer has to worry about where her son is. She no longer has to worry about his medication and his schizophrenia. And when we come into that, when the team is when the team of case managers, when we're coming because we come unannounced, she no longer has to worry about that. She's free of
Yeah.
that. She's free of being a caretaker. So I understand that. So with that, any final thoughts before I close, cousin Kareem?
Be more empathetic. Just be more empathetic. If you don't know what empathy means, look it up for yourself. It shouldn't be a point in time right now. It's not like olden days like we were. We had to grab the dictionary. You can go straight to Google, Chat GBT, whatever. If you don't know, don't understand the word, look it up. Take it to heart. Be empathetic. That's what's missing in this world. Too many people are just pushing people in boxes and corners and not even thinking about who they are and what they are about, and don't even care to know. Be empathetic. That would help tremendously. All you
Right.
religious people don't understand what empathy is. Do unto others as you would have done to you. That's plain and simple. Put it like that. Get out your own self. Get out your own way.
Mm.
Be empathetic towards everybody.
Cousin Kareem has spoken. He said, be empathetic all the way. All righty. So if you're struggling with addiction, please reach out. Resources are available. You are not alone. You can go to any one of my social media pages, DM me. I have a host of resources, regardless of what state you're in. I will find your resources for you. Okay. So thank you for joining us today on this journey through grief and healing and remembrance. Grief is not something we simply get over. It's something we learn to carry, something that shapes us, and something that teaches us about love and resilience. As you move through your own process, remember to be patient with yourself. There's no timeline, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. Honor your feelings, embrace the memories, and allow yourself space to heal in your own time. If today's episode resonated with you, we love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to reach out, share your story, or let us know how grief shaped your journey through life. And if you know someone who might need this conversation, please share this episode with them. You can reach out to us on Instagram at Queen of Life Empowerment or SBSH Grief Podcast or Man of Faith for Cousin Kareem. Facebook at Sometimes We Boujee, Sometimes We Hood. Please, any one of you, anybody listening on any of these platforms, go to Facebook, like Sometimes We Bougie, Sometimes We Hood, so we can actually do the live podcast from there. TikTok at Sometimes We're Bougie and Hood. Again, um, the national helpline for anyone who has addiction is 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-HELP. Okay. There are grief recovery methods. All right. There's also the Compassionate Friends. That's a grief support group. You also have Al-Anon and Nur-Anon. And then there's local grief and addiction recovery groups. So please reach out if you need that support. Until next time, be kind to yourself, hold space for your emotions, and remember, you are never alone in this journey. Take gentle care of yourself. You are carrying the most beautiful love there is. You don't have to walk this road in silence. Your love and your light still matter.
Yes.
Until then, see y'all next week. Again, there will be a part 2. There will be a part 2. All right. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Enjoy.
It's a podcast dedicated to exploring the complex emotions of loss, the road to healing, and the strength found in remembering.